Hey, this is Johnny with Tuberculosis MMA. Today I'm going to go over UFC 310, give you my thoughts and predictions on the entire card. Pantoja versus Asakura. Asakura, if you don't know already, you will, because they're talking a lot about this guy as the man that might be able to knock out Pantoja. Former Risen champion, now coming into the UFC, dropping down again to 125 to fight for the title. And it's going to be a fun fight where a lot of people are going to pick Asakura at plus money and hope to God that he knocks out Pantoja, where personally, I'd like to see him back Uber driving. I've been making all these stupid jokes about like, oh, if Pantoja was a professional wrestler, his special move would be the Uber driver. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this particular matchup itself. The entire card, if I'm honest, I'm not going to watch it. I actually have a judge assignment for that week. I didn't realize it was for the 7th. I thought it was going to be that Friday, so I instantly agreed to it. I still would have done it, but I would have been a little bit more prepared. But yeah, I'll give you my quick thoughts and predictions on this entire card, which I like to call the geezer card because the average age of the contestants on this card here is about 33, almost 34 years old. And the reason it kind of gets brought down, it's because of Chase Hooper, who's like 25, and Joshua Van, who's 23. If these two weren't on there, the average age would probably be like 35 years old. So I'm looking into that. I've been doing a lot of stupid math to see what the average is of these fighters who have the age advantage and if they win more often than they don't. And it's roughly like almost 50-50. But yeah, I'll give you my thoughts and predictions on this. I'm going to ramble a bit about this card itself. But what is the first fight of the night? I'm going to half-ass the shit out of this. First fight of the night here, we've got Kennedy and Nzechukwu versus Brzeski. Now, the odds, heavy favorite for Kennedy, obviously, is minus 520. The African Savage obviously moved up to heavyweight. He didn't fight the best heavyweight opposition in Chris Barnett. And Chris, being basically not fully healed from being damaged to the legs from an earlier injury, it was not a pretty sight, but Kennedy beat him pretty easily. But Lucas, right, he's more or less on a pretty bad losing streak. Yeah, he beat Valentin, right? Valentin Walker. I don't know why I called him Walter. But he beat him because Valentin's a moron and a mongoloid. But other than that, he's been on a 4-fight losing streak. If you want to give Walker that win, if you're one of the few people who bet Walker like blindly and lost, if you want to give Lucas Brzeski this loss, he's on a 5-fight losing streak. Just recently got knocked out by Mick Parkin, who doesn't knock anybody out in the UFC. So Lucas, he's going to have the more, voluminous strikes. He's going to throw more volume. The problem with the guy is that at any moment, if Kennedy decides to go, he's got the better grappling. He can strike. He's the bigger dude. Being heavier at what did he weigh in last time? 141. I think he's going to weigh in around the same weight. His chin's going to be better. He's not cutting down to 205. He's a monster at 205. He's going to be a monster at 265. The problem with Kennedy is that, and I've said it time and time again, the guy is not all there with the aggression sometimes. Like, he can wait a bit too much. Saif Sayoud's always yelling at him. There's just a lot to like about Kennedy, and there's a ton to dislike at these odds. If, say, for whatever reason, Kennedy was like minus 115, I'd be taking out a second, third, fourth mortgage just to bet it all on him to win. But at minus 520, there's a lot that can go wrong here, where if he is tentative or gun-shy, at any point, Brzeski can maybe outpoint him, but realistically, Kennedy has every advantage here. If he wants to take it to the ground and just destroy Lucas Brzeski, he can do so. He is a very nimble guy. He's a very athletic heavyweight, Kennedy that is, and I think he's going to have his way with him. And whether it be by knockout or by submission, I think Kennedy's going to win here. It's going to be interesting when they give Brzeski another, I don't think they're getting rid of him. I don't know what it is about Brzeski that they just like having him around. Like, they like seeing him get beat up, but they'll probably give him another up-and-coming heavyweight that's coming in from the Contender Series. But to me, it's going to be Kennedy by, I'm going to say TKO in the second round. I think he's going to start off slow. Brzeski's going to keep throwing his volume. And eventually, Kennedy's going to get him down to the ground, elbow the shit out of him, and then ground and pound him to victory. Don't bet Kennedy, though, because maybe one of those elbows will hit the back of the head of Brzeski. And Brzeski, I can guarantee you, I don't want to say that Brzeski's a quitter, but given the fact that his job is on the line, we can see him just start morphing right into that guy whose name I just can't remember, but I can see his ugly face, Cody Brundage. I can see him morphing into Cody Brundage, turning into a troll, and just saying, "Oh, I can't, my head." So I'd stay away from betting Kennedy in this spot unless you're going to, maybe go with the TKO or inside the distance if the line is good. But moving on, we've got an interesting bout that, minus 770 for Chase Hooper. I've got quite a bit to say about it. Chase Hooper versus Clay Guida. This is one of those matchups where youth is on the side of Chase Hooper. He is on a 3-fight winning streak. All three, well, not all three. What was this here? Nick Fiore. I'm surprised he didn't finish Nick Fiore, but he's on a good win streak, right? He's 2-fight submission TKO streak. He beat Vyacheslav. He submitted Jordan Levitt. Now, when Clay Guida fought Chase Hooper before, and if you don't know, they grappled in Fury grappling a while ago. I saw Clay Guida do very well using his All-American Wrestling, primarily because he had the singlet on, he had the shoes on, and I thought, if he can get some top control on Chase Hooper, he's going to be able to dictate where this fight goes. He can get some top control, and he can more or less just lay on top and win this fight. Given the fact that there's going to be like punches and elbows and everything in between involved in this fight, I'm thinking, is there a chance that Clay can do the same? But then I go back and rewatch exactly what happened in that grappling matchup. And Chase was doing well wrestling. Chase was attacking legs. There was no heel hooks allowed in that competition, more so because you don't want to damage the knees of active fighters. So what does Clay Guida do? He gets locked up in a calf slicer, which Chase Hooper locked up real quick. Chase essentially dominated when he got on top of Clay. So I wonder if Clay is going to try to strike with Chase Hooper. I think Clay's striking has gotten a lot better over the years. Even at 42 years old, the dude's still got some pop in his punches. He's still tough. He can get it to the ground if need be. And Chase Hooper, he did drop Vyacheslav, who's like the striking coach. I think Clay used to be at Alpha Male, right? But he's the Alpha Male striking coach. That doesn't mean shit to me. I think that Chase Hooper striking has improved, but it's not to the point of like, oh my God, he's going to come out here and have a clinic striking-wise with Clay Guida. I think Chase Hooper, given the fact that I would call him like, the twink Chase Hooper, the fact that he's had sex already and he's kind of popped his cherry, something unlocked in this kid. He's more aggressive. He's more like wanting to strike. He's just got a little bit more of that ramped up anger now that he's had a little bit of the poon. So good for Chase. Props for him. The problem is, though, minus 770, you can't really bet on him to win this fight. Like, yes, I think he's going to win by a submission. I think he will eventually get Clay Guida in something either leg lock related or take the back or triangle. It's just that Chase cannot rely on being on his back the whole time. I think he's very comfortable being on his back, but if Clay can get some shots off on Chase Hooper, he has a ton of experience. He's still very active for his age. Plus 500 on Clay. I'm not liking the bet on Clay Guida. Maybe live betting him if you really feel, if you want to fade Chase Hooper. Early on, I think Chase is going to dictate where the fight maintains. I think even if he gets taken down, I don't think Clay's going to want to play on the mat with him, especially knowing that there's going to be elbows from the bottom if he does go for him. And, the threat of the leg locks, which, if Clay gives up a leg lock, he will tap. We saw it with Poyes, who is another floppy fucking guy that we expected him to, get exhausted, and Clay still tapped to that knee bar. So to me, it's going to be Chase Hooper to get a submission in the first 2 rounds. I will go round number 2 just out of respect for Clay Guida, but it is going to be Chase Hooper coming out here with the victory. I think he's made the proper improvements that if, say, the only way I can see Chase Hooper losing is if he gets caught with a pretty nasty shot. Even then, I think Clay doesn't necessarily have that kind of tremendous knockout power to really hurt Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper's never really been knocked out. We've seen Steve Garcia beat the shit out of him, and we've seen what Steve's been doing recently. He's been putting people out. if Chase Hooper does get hurt, now that he's up in weight at 155, I think he can eat those punches. Maybe he can, pull the Oliveira and get on his back and try to recover. I just see that either way, if Chase Hooper is in any trouble, I think you can find a way out of it. Give me Chase Hooper by submission. I'll say second round. Next bout here, another geezer matchup where the guys are evenly aged up. 37 years old for Michael Maverick Chiesa, come back on Max Payne Griffin. He is 39 years old. For the odds, minus 155. Griffin, come back on Chiesa plus 130. So I've said it many, many times before. Chiesa loves to get beat by minorities. And Max Griffin, I don't know if he is like, I know he's black, but what kind of a black guy is he? Is he from like New Orleans? He's from Sacramento. If he would have been from Oakland, I would have, jumped all over him. But as for Max Griffin, he's going to have the striking advantage. I think despite him being older, at 170, I think Max Griffin is the play here. I like the odds on Max Griffin. I think his takedown defense has improved. I think his offensive wrestling has improved. The problem with Max, though, is that he does tend to slow down midway round number 2, and then he more often than not loses round number 3. Chiesa, his only win as of late is over Tony Ferguson, who is completely washed. For Max, you see his record, right? We see Neil Magny, where he went to a split decision, which I cashed on because, Max is a little stupid. Tim Mean split decision, but I actually thought he beat him pretty decisively. The Michael Morales fight, I thought he fought admirably against Michael Morales, where, say, if you compare that to Michael Chiesa fighting Michael Morales, he would have gotten his ass finished because he is a minority. And then the Jeremiah Wells fight, the Jeremiah Wells fight was fucking ugly, but the fact that he was able to get back up from bottom with Jeremiah Wells, that fucking freak athlete. If Michael Chiesa, I think he's got excellent jiu-jitsu, but the guy is known to panic. He's a very awkward dude when it comes to him getting punched in the face. He will shoot awkwardly. Max, not really known for the submissions. I would not be surprised if he does pull one out of his ass here against Michael Chiesa, who will more than gladly tap out for him to the weakest headlock choke that is not like a bulldog choke that's not even in there. He will gladly tap to it because he gets off on it. For me, though, I think Max is going to win this one by a decision. I think it can get grimy a few spots here or there because if Michael gets some top control, he might get it later on where, say, Max has already banked in 2 rounds, but Michael takes the back, and then it's up to Max to survive. To me, though, I just don't like Michael Chiesa being so inactive, his only win being against a Tony Ferguson, where he did make it look easy when he decided to go, but that inactivity in the cage against Tony Ferguson, where he wasn't doing anything, he was just kind of waiting. Max Griffin will take clear advantage of that, where all you have to do is take advantage of the minutes in the cage. If Michael's not doing anything, put some stuff in front of his face, walk him down, and then all you have to do for the remainder of the round is avoid getting taken down. And then come round number 2, he's going to come out here trying to get the takedown, avoid that, punish him, and then just eke out a decision, right? It's pretty easy to beat Michael Chiesa, really. Just hurt him, punch him, avoid him, and then eventually, if you can put him in submission, he will tap out for you. But yeah, Michael Chiesa plus 130. This could be a good live betting situation if for whatever reason Max Griffin pulls a stunt. Michael's striking has over the years improved enough, but it's typically highlighted when he is not necessarily the better of the 2 fighters. I don't know how to word this, but when he is the more competent striker of the 2, like if you look at the fight between him and Sean Brady wanted to get it to the ground. Michael Chiesa actually wanted to keep it on the feet because he was a longer dude, and he was landing some good shots on Sean Brady. Other than that, though, if you punch Michael Chiesa, he will not like it, and he will go for the legs where you can at that point sprawl and make him pay, make him uncomfortable. So give me Max Griffin to make him uncomfortable, bring the pain, and win this old man fight. Next bout. We've got Cody Durden versus Joshua Van, a fight where there's a little bit of shit talk. Joshua's been talking a little bit of shit about Cody. Cody's kind of known to talk shit to his opponents. And we've got Joshua being 23 years old versus the 33-year-old Cody Durden. 10-year age difference. That's a lot of experience on the edge of Cody, being obviously a former wrestler, division athlete, training with, ATT, training with Pantoja, actually even training with the last guy who beat his ass and Bruno Bulldog. For Joshua Van, he has shown a lot of, positive signs of fight IQ within his like short time in the UFC. His only loss coming to a really tough veteran in Charles Johnson, where he kind of got surprised with that uppercut and knocked out. And I did fade him in his last fight against fucking mini Poatan in Edgar Chairez, where it just kind of proved to me that I can't keep counting out Joshua Van. He lost round number 1 pretty decisively. And what's funny, I actually bet Chairez, and this was at the Sphere. Side note, I went to the Sphere. I saw that shit. I went back and rewatched it, for the first time out on TV, and I'm like, holy shit, it actually looks a little bit better on TV. It looks more miraculous and spectacular. Being there live was awesome, but like being there behind the couch and shit, like on the TV, it looks even more mystical because you're like, what the fuck's going on? But it was fucking dope. But yeah, that fight was amazing. Loses that fight. I checked the live odds. I can see if I can cash out on Chairez, and he was, I was getting most of my money back and then some on Chairez, but I decided to ride it out because I'm like, he's already banked 1 round. Joshua Van, what he does so well is he mixes in body shots, which completely changes the direction of any fight. For Cody Durden, right, he's going to have the wrestling advantage. He's going to have decent enough striking. I think he's going to have success against Joshua early because Joshua does tend to be the slower of the two fighters, right? Cody's a very fast starter. Joshua tends to be a little lackadaisical, more so making reads. And then come round number 2, he starts off really fast. I think they both have decent cardio. I think Joshua's cardio is much better. I shouldn't even say that. Like, I think Joshua's cardio is actually very good. As for Cody's, it's good up until the point where it fails him, which is usually round number 3, depending on how fast-paced he goes. That's usually been his issue, where he goes a little too hard sometimes, gasses out, and then he's kind of a sitting duck there where he has to survive. I think the biggest difference maker here is going to be, Joshua Van's youth, his explosiveness, his very good cardio, and his ability to survive. I think this kid, he's had really tough fights. He's shown a lot of grit in the cage. He's shown a lot of sometimes poor fight IQ and sometimes high fight IQ. So it's really hard to gauge which Joshua Van you're going to get. For me, though, I don't like betting Joshua Van, when he's a favorite. Like, he's minus 165 here. I don't foresee Cody coming in here and submitting Joshua Van very easily. Joshua does train with, Daniel Pineda, who himself is a very good grappler, right? Very good chokes. I think that obviously that's a star pupil there. You might think of Daniel Pineda as kind of this fucking loser guy, but I actually like the fact that him training in Houston, having a guy like Daniel Pineda to kind of train him and mold him, use his natural gifts and skills. I think that's a very good coach for him to picture that. He's getting choked out by Daniel all the time. He's learning how to defend these chokes. I like him training with Daniel Pineda. Cody Durden obviously is training with a much better team. But for me, though, I think I like the idea of betting Joshua Van round number 2 or after he's kind of losing round number 1. I think Cody will take round number 1. The difference maker for me, though, is Joshua Van's body work. I mean, he's going to work the body of Cody. I think he eventually will start targeting that liver. The way he throws those fucking body shots is ridiculously beautiful, man. And I think that eventually it is going to be Joshua Van that's going to take over, where I see him TKOing Cody Durden in round number 3. I think he's going to put a lot of punishment on him. He's going to put a lot of pressure come round number 2, where Cody will be shooting. At that point, I think the sprawl of Joshua Van will be there. And even if it's not, though, as long as Joshua Van makes Cody Durden work and avoid any submissions, primarily like the Darces and the Anacondas, I think at that point, Cody's gas tank will significantly drop to the point where it's going to be easier for Joshua Van to land on him. And when he starts tickling that liver, I think that Cody Durden's going to be in a fucking world of pain. I think Joshua Van, when he lets his combinations go, he is one of the nastiest finishers. So give me Joshua Van round number 3. I'm going to look into that prop specifically, but primarily I am going to look to bet Joshua Van live. But yeah, I really like this matchup because as much as I talk about Joshua Van, the improvements that Cody Durden has been making have been delightful, right? His striking has gotten better. He's a guy that he's consistently the underdog, and you like betting the guy because he can pull it out of anywhere, right? The fight with him and Bruno Silva, that one was disappointing for him because he practically had it in the bag, but then he got caught. His fight next after that against Schnell, where he caught him in that ninja choke, it was a tentative Cody Durden, but he eventually landed the good shots and he got the choke. But I think that was what he needed to get back on track, get his confidence back up after getting knocked out viciously. You go from winning an entire round, dominating, feeling good about yourself, like, oh shit, I'm back on track, and then you get knocked the fuck out by your training partner. It can kind of suck. But I think in this case, so it is truly up to Joshua Van to be the one to dictate the pace after round number 2, because I want to bet him live. So give me round number 3, TKO Van. Next bout. So Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. Weidman is minus 105, 40 years old. Anders, minus 115, 37 years old. I picked Anders originally, and then, they had to cancel the bout. Now they're pushed back out here. Oh, man. After some consideration, I am considering picking Weidman because I don't like the fact that Eric Anders got dropped by Jamie Pickett. That's a really bad sign for me. For Chris, a couple things about Chris, right? Chris Weidman, his legs have been an issue. Clearly his chin isn't there. He was away for a long time with, the possibility of him never walking again, possibility of him never fighting again. But there's some things about Chris that you just can't really put down on paper. You just have to see it to believe it. The fact that he did break his leg pretty bad, the fact that he never decided to quit, came back, fought, what's his name? Porcupine, Brad Tavares, got his legs chewed up, never stopped fighting, never quit, never got the TKO over him. Yeah, he poked Bruno Silva a few times. Oh, pretty bad. But the fact that he made those improvements of like, hey, maybe I should stick my fingers out, learn from the best. I can respect that. I can respect the fact that he consistently wants to win. He's not fighting in New York where they're going to let him do whatever the fuck he wants. And maybe that's a good thing. I've seen him cuck in New York a couple times. I've seen him get dropped in New York and then come back and win. And now that he's fighting in... Where the fuck are they fighting, actually? I completely forgot where the fuck they're fighting. Because it is of no interest to me because I will not be watching it. And they're fighting in Vegas, so cool. Won't matter to me none. But yeah, the fact that he's not fighting in New York, I think that juju won't be there for him where he's like, oh my God, I can't lose in front of my spaghetti-eating people. I'm kind of leaning on the Weidman pick here. The fact that he is the better wrestler. I think his striking has improved, and call me stupid, but I think his striking is going to be a little bit more fluid than Eric Anders. He's a tank of a man. He is very slow. He does hit hard. He's primarily becoming more of a grappler himself, but the tale of two different fights here. If Eric Anders is giving up takedowns towards Chris Weidman, Chris will eventually find the victory, I think. I think he's going to win by a decision. But if Eric Anders says, fuck it, I'm coming forward and trying to take Chris Weidman's head off, he can definitely do it. I think Chris's chin is the biggest liability here. If he had a better chin, not getting dropped and knocked the fuck out, I'd feel a lot better about, picking Chris Weidman. But it really does come down to if Chris Weidman training with his brother-in-law and Wonder Boy, which you clearly see it there. You see the improvements in both of them. I'm going to bring up Wonder Boy later on and how the training with Chris Weidman help him make one guy look bad, and how the training with Wonder Boy made Chris Weidman a little bit more fluid on the feet, a little bit more comfortable. I like that from Chris Weidman. I'm going to pick Chris Weidman. I think on the feet he can be a little bit more elusive and protect his chin, make Eric Anders miss, duck under for the single leg, take him down, control him. We got to remember Chris Weidman's got a black belt in Saralongo Jiu-Jitsu. Sarah Jiu-Jitsu. Give me Chris Weidman here. More so because Eric Anders, he's a big powerhouse of a guy, but, he's never been a champ. I don't think he's ever fought the type of competition Chris Weidman's fought, even if, by any chance Eric Anders at his best would have fought that competition, he would have lost. Give me Chris Weidman, give me that tenacity. I really didn't like the fact that I saw Jamie fucking Pickett drop Eric Anders, and him just ducking his head, consistently trying to get these takedowns was like, I didn't like that at all. Mostly last time I was just picking Anders because he was a younger dude. After kind of doing some assessment, typically when I did my research on the average age of the fighter who wins and blah 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 blah, I kind of saw the conclusion that it generally comes down to the older fighter will win if they have more experience or more accolades, which in this case Chris Weidman will be the guy. Moving on, next bout we've got Randy Brown versus Bryan Battle. For me though, full disclosure, I love Bryan Battle. I fucking hated the nickname Pooh Bear. He listened to me. He changed it to the Butcher. Whether he heard me talking shit behind his back, I don't know, but I love the new Triple B Bryan Butcher Battle. 30 years old, minus 250. I don't love the odds because there's a lot of danger coming back from Randy Brown, but Randy Brown tends to put himself in more danger than any person I've ever really seen. When he starts getting all swaggy, he puts himself in spots where he can get clipped. He can get his head kicked off because he ducks his head. Great striker. But for me, though, what I love about Bryan Battle is that he, lack of a better word, doesn't give a fuck. He will move forward. He will hurt you. In certain cases where he's not the better striker, he will still beat the shit out of you. The guy has power. I love his cardio at 170. There's really nothing I don't like about Bryan Battle. His promo skills are fucking elite. The fact that he's beating the shit out of French people in France, I love it. There's no way in fucking hell I'm going to pick against Bryan Battle. Because also, you might not know this, any Mexicans out there, if you love your agua de pepino or, pepino Gatorade, pepino limon, Bryan Battle loves that shit too. He's one of us. Just for that, I'm picking him. But the truth is, Randy Brown, the dude is incredibly talented, right? But right now, he's not going to have a huge reach advantage or height advantage over his opponent. This is one of the few occasions where he is going to meet his match. A guy who can meet him at range, a guy who can hit as hard as he can, maybe not as clean as Randy Brown is with the striking, but what Randy doesn't possess is, to me, high fight IQ. I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like when you open the refrigerator, the light turns on and it turns off. It's like he's constantly turning it on and off. Like, oh, I'm gonna fight like a fucking complete retard. And then he's like, oh no, maybe I should keep distance and like fight at range and try to find my shots. Like it's super hard to predict what Randy Brown's gonna do. But at plus 205, I understand if you take a shot on him. But I've never been impressed by the guy. The guy's chin is fucking trash. If Bryan connects on him, it's not a matter of how Bryan's going to finish. It's will Bryan finish? And typically the answer is yes. Bryan, yes, he has been hurt a few times, but he doesn't have the kind of chin that Randy Brown has where he does the Bambi shit. He will either get dropped, but he will continue to fight. He will, duck for legs. I like Bryan in this spot. I think if Bryan at any point gets hurt, I'm going to be able to see him, pardon the fucking phrase, but battle his way back. As for Randy Brown, he will brown his pants and get choked out or knocked the fuck out. I like Bryan Battle in this spot, primarily in the second round. I think Bryan will take his time. I think he's going to push a pace. He's going to try to find the reads. And then he eventually hurts Randy Brown, either takes him down, beats his ass up. If Zaleski's taking you down and controlling you, I think Bryan Battle's going to run right through you. I'm looking to see Bryan Battle completely run through Randy Brown here. That's what I want to see. Give me, I don't want to guarantee that Bryan Battle's going to win because, this fucking sport is ridiculous. Bryan Battle gets his toe stuck in the cage. They call it a TKO. We've seen that before. If you know who I'm referencing to, listed in the comments, I'll send you 1,000 Tiger points. Not usable outside the U.S., so go fuck yourself. But yeah, if Bryan Battle doesn't win this fight, I don't know, man. I can almost guarantee he's going to win, but I can't guarantee he's going to win. But I do think he's going to beat the shit out of Randy Brown. So give me Bryan Battle round number 2. I'm going to say TKO. I think he's like, he can go for the sub, right? But I think he's going to really want to put the fucking boots to Randy Brown. Next bout, we've got, is this the prelim? No, thank God. I thought this was a prelim main event. That would have sucked. It's like, hey guys, you buy the pay-per-view. Here's Movsar Evloev versus fucking Aljamain Sterling. Enjoy. I would not want to see that. Like, oh, fuck, dude. I would be so fucking pissed. Like, hey, if I was a child and I was like, hey, mom, dad, please buy this pay-per-view. I'd love to watch UFC. My friends keep talking about it. And then we click on ESPN and it's Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling just rolling around half naked. I'm pretty sure I'd be put in some camp where I would have to like pray to God to get rid of the sinfulness in my nature, and I would not be allowed to eat carrots the long way. They'd have to chop them up for me. So yeah, I think this would be a bad move for them to do so. What is the main event? Oh my God, what is the? Okay, it's gonna be Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith as the highlight fight for the prelim ender. But anyways, back to Evloev. He's not losing this fight. He's got the takedown defense advantage. Listing it off here, let me pull this up. Number one, I despise Aljamain Sterling, not to the point of like Tyron Woodley levels. If you know how much I hate Tyron Woodley, if you've been following me for all this time, you would know I fucking hate Tyron Woodley. And I don't necessarily hate Aljamain to that point. I actually think that outside of fighting, Aljamain seems like a nice, cool dude, like nice enough guy. But when he puts on that shtick, I just want to smack the fucking shit out of him. But knowing that he would just like hunt me for 15 minutes, I probably wouldn't do so. I don't want that gayness on me. Just feeling that thing on my back, I'd be like, okay, I tap. Anyways, Evloev, he has a 71% takedown defense compared to Aljamain Sterling, who's got a 45% takedown defense. All right, 145 Aljo. Is he going to be taking down Evloev? I don't fucking think so. I think Aljamain, I've said it many times before, we just hadn't been able to see it for a while. When you make Aljamain uncomfortable, very much so similar to Chiesa, this dude becomes a floppy fucking scarecrow. He will make some stupid decisions. He will gas out. He will just flop around, just kind of hope for the best to try not to get finished. And I think it's going to be a decision for Evloev. He is the better striker. I think he is more suited at 145. You know, Aljamain's a big boy, but the fact that what made Aljamain so dominant is that he had obviously that wrestling advantage. He's a very good grappler, but he also had the advantage over the 135ers because he was so goddamn big. In this case, they're the same size. I think Evloev obviously is going to be the better on the feet, just cleaner technique, more comfortable, avoid the takedowns of Sterling. Sterling does have decent enough cardio, decent enough pace, but again, at 145, he doesn't have those physical attributes. He will be strong. I don't think he's going to be stronger than Evloev. And obviously, he's undefeated. And it's going to be nice to have that former champion on his resume where we can potentially finally see Ilia Topuria knock him the fuck out to give him that stain of a 1 on his record. It's going to be awesome. But, you know, it's going to be a decision for me. I don't see Aljamain necessarily getting rocked too bad or knocked out. Evloev's not really much of a finisher himself. Give me Evloev by a decision. He's minus 245. The plus 200 on Sterling, I can't advise to that. Like, if say I wanted to make a case for Sterling, I'd like to be proven wrong by him for the fact that, like, maybe now his striking is going to look a little bit cleaner. He's going to have more power at 145. I really doubt it, though. I think I've seen what Sterling looks like when he's not having his way. Like we've seen it with the first Jan fight, he becomes uncomfortable. You can just toss him around. Again, give me Evloev to more or less dominate Aljamain Sterling everywhere. Will Sterling have some moments? Yeah, he'll be holding Evloev against the cage for like maybe a total of 3 minutes in this fight where, yeah, I guess if one judge really likes the idea of like a Mandingo holding down a young Twinkie Russian, they might give him the split decision. But other than that, I don't see that happening. Give me Evloev by a decision. Next bout, we've got Vicente Luque, plus 175 versus Themba the Answer Gorimbo, minus 210. So the minus 210 on Gorimbo, I know for a fucking fact people are just dying to fade Gorimbo here. And this could be the spot. But how are you going to fade Gorimbo? To me, I think it's going to be Vicente Luque by finish. Oh man, it's tough for me because the way I see Themba losing this fight, I can see him walking right into that Anaconda. Themba's been submitted before. I can see him getting knocked out by the viciousness of Luque. I can see Luque just avoiding the takedowns and writing a decision. That last part, though, very, very unlikely. Luque, what sucks about Luque in this spot is that the way he looked against Buckley was like so soul crushing that I cannot view Luque the same way. It really broke my heart. I'm like, yo, if Luque comes out here looking like old Luque, at any way old Luque, just a small sliver of old Luque, he can do some damage to Buckley. Buckley hit him with some of the wackest fucking punches to TKO him on the ground. And to me, it just looked like Luque didn't have that killer instinct in him anymore. He just didn't seem to have the want or need to be violent. Because when you go back and you look at highlights of Luque, what he did to Randy Brown was borderline criminal, man. It could have been considered a snuff film. And I just don't see it from him anymore. Like his fight with RTA, he's wrestling with him. Not a fan of that. Themba, on the other hand, I've seen that aggression from him. He just seems to have that nastiness in him where he's like, I'm not fucking losing. Like, death will come for you one day. I'm like, oh, fuck. Okay, Themba. Jesus Christ. Like, he does kind of look like Death's shadow. So, fuck, man. Just for that, I'm a little terrified. But Themba, he's such a anomaly because he will try to grapple fuck you, but he is very aggressive at times. And I think if he can use that aggression, avoid getting submitted, he can cruise to a decision here. I think when you look at his last matchup, I consider it being very similar to how Luque is now against Nico Price. A very dangerous guy. He can finish you at any point, but he's up there in age. He's taking a ton of damage. Not the same guy anymore. And Themba's just kind of eating the scraps of these former amazing fighters. And I hate to say that, but Luque is now in the scrap territory. Do I want Luque to win? With all of the fiber of my being, I want to see Luque win this. Previously, before I started doing the fucking channel, I used to fucking make t-shirts, one of them, which I don't have anymore because my mom is like questioning me. I used to be gay for Luque. Not many people understood who the fuck Vicente Luque was, thus not a very effective shirt joke. But still, like, I love Luque. Fibers of my being, man. The fact that he choked out Tyron Woodley, he knocks him the fuck out, chokes him out, like, those feelings, right? They give me, like, whenever I can't get it up because I'm just tired, I just watch a Vicente Luque fight, and then I'm like, okay, let's go. But in this case, it is going to be Themba's fight to lose, and I don't think Themba's in the losing business right now. I think he's in here to prove points. Can he get caught? Yes, but are we really betting on Themba getting caught? I understand that this guy visually looks like he sucks, but it's not the skill that we're betting on. It's not the skill that I'm betting on if I end up betting Gorimbo, which I'm considering. It's more so the mentality, right? The mentality of get the fuck out of my way. I'm going to find a way to win this fight. Whether he gets taken down himself, he will fight. I didn't see that from Luque in his last few fights, where he's not fighting for position. He's not fighting to get a finish. He's just more or less fighting to survive. Given the fact that, yes, the brain bleed bullshit, I wouldn't be surprised if Themba knocks him out. And I hate saying that out loud. But give me Themba by a decision for the sake of Luque. But yeah, I understand the need to fade Themba. But again, like, we've seen guys who do not look good find a way to win. One of them is champion right now, and he is the greatest champion that ever lived. True African king and Dricus du Plessis. Next bout. Okay. Another matchup here where it's two guys that you can't really trust. Anthony Smith versus Dominic Reyes. Minus 340 for Dominic Reyes is absolutely laughable. Even more so laughable at someone betting Anthony Smith at plus 265. And I fully am aware that I actually bet Anthony Smith his last time out against a much better fighter in Roman Dolidze, and that did not go well for me. The reason is, as much as Anthony Smith can really shine sometimes, because he is still very technically gifted. They're both roughly the same age, 36, 34, same height. Dominic Reyes has been on a vicious losing streak, getting knocked the fuck out by jabs. Ryan Spann, Jury knocked him out so bad that, like, I think it completely broke his brain. I think he's off the bath salts, though, so that's good. But Anthony Smith, though, funny enough about bath salts and Anthony Smith, the guy who broke into his fucking house was probably actually on bath salts. So maybe just based off of that, Anthony Smith's Getting knocked out by a bath salt ridden Dominic Reyes would be really fucking funny. I had to cut apart because I talked a little bit too much shit about Anthony Smith, and being the fact that I actually live near Anthony Smith, I don't want the commission coming after me. But anyways, the fact that Anthony Smith has so much negative shit surrounding him, the fact that his nickname is Lionheart, and I've seen this guy quit, I've seen this guy yell at Johnny Walker for no fucking reason. I've seen this guy just not have the will to win. You know, the complete opposite of what I think that Chris Weidman has. The fact that, you know, he can take a shot still, but man, the fact that fight with the Luque was just such a ugh. If Dominic Reyes does not hand himself open, give a neck to Anthony Smith, fall on his ass and give his back to Anthony Smith, present his chin up in the air to Anthony Smith, I think Dominic Reyes is going to cruise to a decision, mostly because I think Dominic is still the much more athletic, the still hungry guy. The fact that he got on a 4-fight devastating losing streak and never gave up on himself. I'm not picking him because he just jokingly knocked out Dustin Jacoby. It's not the fact that I think he's back. I think that skill for skill, hunger for hunger, Dominic is still much higher on that list than Anthony Smith. I think Anthony Smith thinks he can still go, but he definitely can't. I think Dominic is more realistic that the fact that he's not the same dude, but he still possesses some of his former qualities. Like, he's still very athletic. He's still very accurate with that left hand. You know, he has to be realistic about what he's going to do with his title career. He's not going to be a champion anymore. He's not going to contend at any time. He may lose this fight. I think he's very aware of that. Yeah, all he has to do is kind of cruise to a decision here. And by that, he just has to stay on the outside, kick the shit out of Anthony Smith, kick his body. He has a very good lead left high kick, body kick, low kick. You know, just be very mobile and just don't get hit with those Anthony Smith low kicks, and I think he'll be fine. So give me Reyes by a decision. To me, it's either, you know, decision or TKO, but more than likely it's going to be decision for Dominic Reyes. Next bout, we have got the main card opener. Now, this is a main card opener, right? We've got Choi versus Nate the Train Landwehr, minus 165 for the Train. Come back on the Korean Superboy, plus 135. So to get Nate out of the way, I keep fading Nate Landwehr for obvious reasons, right? This guy, if you touch him just right, you can put him away. If you are smart about it, you can put him away. But the guy is just so fucking tough. He is not a quitter. He will not stop coming after you. He has cost me money time and time again. And I am not a guy that like takes that personal, man. If this fucker keeps beating the better fighters, who am I to get upset about that? Like, I thought Jamal Emmers was going to beat his ass. And if I'm being honest, when I saw them face off, I thought Emmers was going to be bigger, that I almost cashed my ticket out. But I'm like, I ain't no bitch. I should have been a bitch. I should have cashed out because Nate froze that man. He was styling on Nate Landwehr, Jamal Emmers. And then for whatever reason, I know the reason, I'll tell you the reason, but for whatever reason, Emmers just stopped fighting. He just kind of looked slow. So I'm like, why? Why, Emmers? Why'd you do that? Nate has a way to use his pressure, his intimidation, that lead teep kick, his toughness. He's the type of guy that you give him your best shot and he just keeps walking towards you. It does something to you mentally, and it fucking sucks. And that's what he's so good at. Even against Ige, where I picked Ige to knock him the fuck out, he still kept coming forward. Like, he got dropped and he kept getting back up. And it sucks to fight a guy like that because the amount of cardio, the amount of tenacity that Nate Landwehr has, the skill, man. If Nate had a much better chin where you couldn't take a round away from him by dropping him or knocking him out, I think this guy might be top 10. He's 26 in the world right now, because I think the fact that he's been wrestling dudes in I was gonna say in Korea, no, in Russia, M1, that scene, the dude he's a great fighter, but I fade the shit out of him every time. Choi, my thoughts on Choi have been, his confidence was down the fucking gutter ever since he got in that nasty war with Cub Swanson, right? After that, what happened to him? He got knocked out by Jeremy Stevens pretty badly. You know, you can see that he just wasn't the same Choi. He got knocked out by Charles Jourdain. I said that weird. He got knocked out by Charles Jourdain. And that's another fight where he was doing well early. And I think that one really hurt his confidence. It's almost like he slowed down a little bit against Charles. He didn't take him seriously because at that time, Charles was not the Charles that we know now. I actually saw the potential in Charles. I actually bet Charles that fight at a whim. I'm like, yo, he's plus money. I actually like what he can do. And then he ended up knocking him out. I was like, sweet. And then the decision draw against Kyle Nelson, you can see the tentativeness of Doo Ho Choi. Obviously, he's on a poor losing streak. He had to go away to service in South Korea. He comes back, and then he has that kind of disappointing loss slash, well, not a loss, but viewing it as a loss because he didn't win against Kyle Nelson. You can sense that it's like he just doesn't think he has it anymore. One thing that I brought up about the Bill Algeo fight is that now that the Korean Zombie is retired, I said, yo, he's going to be training these younger Korean dudes. He's going to have more time with these guys. To me, Korean Zombie, one of the, if not the greatest Korean fighter ever, if you want to count, Yoshihiro Akiyama, Sexyama, I consider him to be a top because of the sexiness. But what I saw from Doo Ho Choi in that Algeo fight was the improvements. The improvements in the wrestling, the improvements in the grappling, having that coach there with him, which was Korean Zombie. The fact that his striking looked good. He was very patient. He wasn't overdoing shit. Here's the thing about Doo Ho Choi with his confidence and why I picture his confidence to be like a key factor in any of his fights. This motherfucker, when he was knocking everybody out in the first round, if you go back in his Instagram, you see this fucking Doo Ho Choi start dressing a little suspect, right? He was dressing like a Korean woman, which, to be frank, is usually how Korean men dress. I mean, this guy was wearing fucking sun hats and all this fucking fruity shit. That's a kind of overconfidence that is going to lead you to get knocked the fuck out, which it did. What I saw, and I specifically went back and saw the Algeo fight to see this, is how he reacted to getting that victory. And I'm like, if this fucker starts crying, because I don't remember, I think he's got a good chance here. And what does he do? He starts fucking crying. He knocks out Algeo. He breaks his fucking eye socket. Starts crying because he was so relieved that he got a victory, and especially getting it back on track. It's like all the hard work, all the losses. It's a tough fight, right? I think Landwehr is the rightful favorite, but damn do I not think that Doo Ho Choi has a chance. And I have to ride with Doo Ho Choi. Here's the other thing, right? I'm going to pick Doo Ho Choi so you can actually bet Nate Landwehr, because I cannot bet a Nate Landwehr fight to fucking save my life. That means Nate's probably going to win. But I like Doo Ho Choi's chances here. I like the fact that if he is patient, he doesn't gas out. I think he's the better, cleaner striker. I think he hits fucking ridiculously hard. I think with his improvement in the wrestling, I think he can actually do well against Nate Landwehr. Just don't let him kind of bully you. Just stay very calm. Let the fucking hands go in the pocket. I think you can hurt and actually knock out Nate. It's not going to be an easy thing, but I like Doo Ho Choi here to get a knockout in the first 2 rounds. I want to see if my theory is correct about Doo Ho Choi now training with a full-time retired Korean Zombie, if that's going to do him a wealth of promise, because if we look at it, Korean Zombie and Doo Ho or Landwehr are very similar. Very good grapplers, take a shot, come moving forward. They're both fucking zombies. Having a full-time zombie as your head coach for Doo Ho Choi, main training partner, I would assume, you're very much well prepared for Nate Landwehr. I hate picking this one. Give me Doo Ho Choi plus money. I'll say second round TKO. All right, here. Bryce Mitchell versus Gracie. Instead of talking about this one, I will flash a picture of this meme that I made about Gracie, and I feel it is brilliant, yet I never got the recognition for it, so I'm going to fucking force you to see it. It is magnificent. Bryce Mitchell versus Gracie. I'm going to ignore all the fucking bullshit surrounding their personal lives and whatnot, but we have got a minus 600 Bryce Mitchell versus a plus 425 Gracie. Bryce Mitchell, he's in a very odd predicament here where he should not be minus 600, and it's primarily the performance from Crone against Jourdain that is making him be that big of a favorite. I think that's fucking stupid. I think against Charles Jourdain, if you put it in perspective, he should have always beaten Gracie. It's really up to Crone to capitalize on any mistake that Charles Jourdain made. And in that fight, Charles Jourdain made zero fucking mistakes. Charles did not throw any kicks. I even said that Charles should win that fight, but knowing Charles, he's going to throw a fucking kick. He never threw a kick, never got taken down. Bryce, his striking, he throws some good kicks sometimes, spinning back kicks and shit. He doesn't have the boxing. This is a much closer fight because of how good of grapplers they are. Bryce being primarily a wrestler. Man, he should win this one, Bryce that is, but the stigma about him getting knocked fucking silly his last fight is kind of looming pretty heavily on me. Thus, he shouldn't be on principle minus 600. So if it gets to the ground, which it more than likely is going to, it's going to be interesting to see what Gracie can do. If I'm going to be honest, I think it's going to be a boring-ass fight where there's going to be two non-strikers going at it. And to me, I think it's going to be Mitchell winning this one by a decision. I think Crone, he's got a good chin. Bryce, we'll see what happens here, but it's a rough one. I'm going to go Mitchell by decision. I think both of these guys right now are in a weird territory where it wouldn't be wise to bet either of them unless you want to throw a couple bucks on Crone just for the fuck of it. But realistically, this should be a fight you can avoid. I would advise heavily not to parlay Bryce Mitchell with anything. That I think would be a very poor decision. I'm not looking forward to this one. Well, part of me is just to see what happens, right? Watch it be fight of the night. These two guys go at it. They're scrambling beautifully. I would hope that would be the case. Next bout, we've got Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov 2. We've got minus 260 on Ciryl Gane. Come back on Volkov is plus 210. You know, they fought before. That was a 5-round fight. In this case, they have it's 3 rounds, right? Yeah, it's a 3-round fight. So what I did notice about the first fight is that I do think that Volkov won some rounds, not necessarily enough to win the fight, but Volkov made it pretty competitive with Ciryl Gane, who used his speed, his athleticism to kind of keep it at his range and his distance. Volkov, we know he's on a 4-fight winning streak. For him to be plus 210 is a little ridiculous. Ciryl Gane, he's getting older. He's 34 years old. Not to say that he's old, but eventually that youthful speed, the fact, oh my God, he moves like a middleweight. He moves like a light heavyweight. He moves like a fucking featherweight. He's going to slow down eventually. But over the years, I do think that he has definitely improved. The fact that he has improved his grappling, his wrestling defense, he's just ridiculously strong. The movement, the punches, the creativity. I think it's going to be another one of these Ciryl Gane decision matchups. I know some people are liking Volkov. Shout out to you, Hunter. I know you're on Volkov. I don't know, man. I don't see it. I think Volkov being so big at 6'7", it benefits him in certain matchups. But when you've got a very speedy guy, a very heavily muscular guy, a guy with good cardio, a guy that can avoid getting taken down, it's going to really take Ciryl Gane to make a huge mistake, similar to the one that he made against John Jones, where he just got kind of taken down awkwardly. But even then, it's John Jones who is much more flexible, much faster, much quicker, a better overall fighter than Volkov, where I actually think Volkov can give John Jones some trouble. In this case, I don't think he can give trouble to Ciryl Gane. I think Gane has perfected that style. I think people judges in particular like Ciryl Gane's style more. Ciryl Gane is probably going to cruise here. It's one of these matchups where if Ciryl Gane wins it, you can probably slide him into a title fight. If Volkov wins it, he might have to win another fight against, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I feel as if at this point, if they're not giving Alexander Volkov a title shot after the fight with Pavlovich, who was a former title contender, fought for the title himself, title challenger, I should say, they're probably not interested in giving Volkov a title shot itself. I think they want to market Ciryl Gane a bit more with that French market, bring that title fight to France. We know how crazy they can get. Give me Ciryl Gane by a decision, plus 260. I might be putting him on a parlay. Next bout, we've got Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry. Garry plus 275. Come back on Rakhmonov is a minus 350. I don't like these odds because I do think that Machado has a chance. Not to say that I think he's going to win. I will automatically just tell you I think Rakhmonov is going to win just so I can drink some fucking Gatorade here. But I think Garry could make it interesting. For the money, plus 275, undefeated guy who I'm high on Garry. Trying to think if there's any joke there about him being a cuck, but I got nothing. Anyways, Shavkat, I've always been high on Shavkat. I've been following him for a while now. Yes, I have seen him get dropped. I've seen him get nearly finished in the past. But for whatever reason, his chin as of late has been highly improved. This guy's taken shots from Jeff Neal. And here's the thing about when you compare their resumes, right? I read something somewhere that they basically fought the same guys. They both fought Neil Magny. One guy finished Neil Magny. They both fought Jeff Neal. One guy actually fought Jeff Neal. And guess who Jeff Neal respects more? Does he respect Ian Garry more for fucking sticking his ass out, trying to hold him against the cage? Or Shavkat, who was taking his shots, punching him, hurting him, and then choked him out like fucking that movie Big Boy, or not Big Boy, Baby Boy. I think even Jeff Neal posted something about it. And then they fought two karate guys, Venom Page, where it was a fucking shit show for Garry, where he was looking terrible. I'm not going to hold that against him. I'll explain. Just very quickly, the matchup it's a difficult one for a guy like Michael Venom Page. You know, his style is just so tricky sometimes that it's going to be awkward for a guy like Garry who's not used to it. And we've got Wonder Boy here. Very similar matchup for Shavkat, where Shavkat was having trouble taking him down. He didn't want anything to do with Wonder Boy because Shavkat's fucking smart. Shavkat knows, like, yo, Wonder Boy's an elite striker. The easiest path for me to take him down is to, or not to take him down, but to beat him is to take him down. The thing about Shavkat is that Shavkat's takedown defense, or not takedown defense, his takedown defense is actually 100%, but his takedown ability is kind of shit, right? I think he only has a 29% accuracy. His takedowns are not great, but his control is phenomenal. His grappling is fantastic. Excuse me. I went back and watched all of his fights in the UFC, and he's struggling taking down most of his opponents. He tends to either drop them or he tends to like capitalize. Like, for example, against Magny, I think Magny threw a kick and he got taken down on those mistakes where he gets on top, but his takedown ability, his wrestling is kind of shit. But when I look at the fight with him and Wonder Boy, and people are like, well, he had trouble taking down Wonder Boy. I'm like, well, number one, his takedown ability sucks. And number two, Wonder Boy has been training with Weidman, thus making his takedown defense a lot better over the years. Like we saw with him and Buckley. He was beating Buckley until he wasn't. And that's what's interesting about a guy like Wonder Boy. If you can beat Wonder Boy, it kind of puts you on that map. And for Garry, if we're going to use that surrogate for Wonder Boy and Michael Venom Page, and if you can't finish Michael Venom Page, there's just, I don't know, man. You had his back, you couldn't finish it. It's a little weird for me, the fact that the dude was training at Shuto Box with Charles Oliveira and Damian Maia, and he couldn't finish Michael Venom Page. And I'm trying not to hold that against him, because when we look at the matchup, they're both strikers. You know, I think Shavkat's got the much better grappling, but takedown ability not necessarily going to be there. Being a 5-round fight, to me, ultimately what I came down to is that I think it's going to be Garry. Let me try to get my brain straight here. I think Garry, if you're betting Garry, you have to understand that the guy is going to do anything in his power to win this fight, thus making it a very boring fight. I think if he keeps it at his distance, where he will have, I think, the kicking range advantage. I think he's much better with the cleaner technique with the kicks. I think Shavkat has good kicks. He likes his spinning back kicks and spinning heel kicks. He will have the reach advantage by 3 inches, Shavkat, that is. The speed is going to be on Garry. I think he's more fluid on the feet. Knowing that this is going to be a striking matchup, I don't think Shavkat's going to be able to take down Garry. I think Gary's takedown defense is solid enough. He is at 69%, perfect because he's a cuck. He ain't getting any of that, but he gets to see it from the chair. But being that it's going to be a striking matchup, it does favor Garry winning this fight, at least on the judges' scorecards, right? So I am considering Garry in that spot. Like, he's very fluid with the pullback counters and 1-2s. We know what he can do, but realistically, though, this is where I'm like, I like Shavkat as a pick, but not to bet him. I think it's Garry or nothing if you're going to bet anything, because I think Garry can make this a competitive fight by minimizing what he does, minimizing the risk, and just throwing enough output to Shavkat where he can capitalize on Shavkat. I think his defense, not the best. It's at 51. They're actually both similar, 51% defense for Shavkat and 52 for Garry. But to me, I think Gary's defense overall is going to be better in this matchup where he's not going to be throwing too much. I think he can actually land cleaner on Shavkat to maybe steal 3 rounds in that fight. The thing about Shavkat, though, being that it's a 5-round fight, and why I'm ultimately leading to Shavkat winning this fight, number one, he's got a 100% finish rate. That's part of the reason why I'm liking his side. The fact that he has more or less equal amounts of knockouts to submissions. If he gets it to the ground, he will dominate Garry. I think Garry will be able to get back up, but eventually, if he settles down on Garry, he will have some control time on him. But what I'm thinking is the aggression of Shavkat moving forward, it could either be a horrible miscalculation for him, or it's what's going to win him this fight. He has 5 rounds. If he doesn't get knocked out, which I think Shavkat's chin is definitely solid, my worry is that if Garry kind of catches him with something quick, which he's got fast hands, it could maybe stun Shavkat. We've seen him hurt before in the UFC against Neal. I've seen him drop pretty bad. It's a very risky fight, but if this is a typical Garry fight where he is on the outside kind of picking his shots and like trying to make sure that he wins, because I don't think Garry gives a shit about how he wins as long as he wins. He needs to prove his doubters wrong. He's got that on his mind. For Shavkat, he's just going out there to finish. He doesn't give a shit about any bullshit he's been talking about. If he wins this fight, he gets to fight Bilal Muhammad. Either of these guys win. Honestly, though, if Garry wins in a very lackluster way, where he fights like a fucking pussy, he's not fighting Bilal. They're going to give him another matchup. But if Shavkat comes out here and he wins regardless of anything, knowing that his style is very aggressive, oriented, he's going to get that title shot. How I see it, though, he's got 5 rounds to hurt Ian Garry, and if he hurts Ian Garry in any way, he is going to be able to finish him. So to me, I think it's going to go at least 4 rounds. Give me Shavkat to actually get a submission over Ian Garry. I think it's going to be a guillotine. We know how good Shavkat's guillotine is. I just need Shavkat to have an opening. And if he cannot get it, he's probably going to lose. Not to say he can't win the decision. I think he does have a lot of output, but it's just going to be rough for him to try to close distance on Garry because he's going to be moving a lot, throwing kicks and trying to counter. It's almost like trying to get into the wood chipper that was once Lyoto Machida with his style, just to a much gayer degree in Garry. But give me Rakhmonov, round number 4, submission. It's always tough, but with Machado, I think if he does hurt him on the feet, he will snatch up that guillotine and Garry will tap. Next bout, we've got the main event. We've got Alexandre Pantoja, the former Uber driver, versus Kai Asakura, former Risen champion. Fascinating matchup. So we've got Asakura dropping down to 125. And I wanted to make sure, because I didn't want to say something in the fact that, like, oh, Asakura's been fighting at 135, but since it's Risen, I just want to make sure bantamweight is actually bantamweight. And yeah, because, you know, sometimes you'll fucking go to a different promotion. It's like, oh, they're fighting at bantamweight. Bantamweight's like 127 pounds. I'm like, well, that ain't fucking bantamweight. That's overweight at flyweight. But no, he primarily has been fighting at bantamweight, and now he's dropping back down to 125 to fight Pantoja. As for Pantoja, like, he's minus 250 here, plus 200 for Asakura. What do I like about Asakura? Well, the fact that he's a phenomenal striker, nasty knees to the body. He's a taller dude, 5'8". The dude is a phenom on the feet. You know, he's not like, oh my God, he's going to knock everybody the fuck out, but he's very fun to watch. Problem is, I went back and watched his catalog recently, and I was not thrilled. Like, I am thrilled to have him in the UFC. I'm thrilled to see if he can actually knock out or finish Pantoja, who himself, just to confirm, has never been finished. And I mean, he has taken some fucking beatings from like Figueiredo, right? That war with Figueiredo, I think he broke his hands in that fight, and he was just throwing elbows. But yeah, he's never been finished. He's never really been rocked. He's been hurt a few times, you know, even against recently, and Steve Ursig was able to hurt him. And some might be able to say, well, Steve Ursig gave him a tough fight. Steve Ursig is a tough fight. You know, yes, he got knocked out recently, but you can't take that into consideration in this matchup, right? You can't look at Pantoja and think he's fucking washed because he went to a close fight with a guy that should not be sniffing the title anytime soon in Kai Kara France. But ultimately, what I'm leading to is Pantoja to win this one by another decision, a grappling heavy decision. When I mentioned that Asakura's recent resume has not necessarily been that visually appealing to me, what I mean is like man, like you let me read off some of these victories. You see like Yuki Motoyama, knee to the body, third round TKO. That sounds awesome when you look at it. He was beating his ass. He landed that knee beautifully, and that's what he does very well. Like, these knees are vicious. He hits right perfectly in the solar plexus. He will finish you. Juan Archuleta, you see that his recent fight, kneed him to the body. That was a tough fight versus Archuleta. Archuleta was actually doing a lot of stuff that Pantoja does, which he goes in reckless. He leaves himself exposed, trying to get to the ground. There was even a moment where I'm not a wrestling expert, but he pulled off a very similar Pantoja takedown where he like scoops the knee, takes you down, then you take the back. But in this case, a round ended, so he wasn't able to capitalize. Ultimately, though, it was Kai Asakura, who I should state, he does have good takedown defense, but against elite grapplers, don't be surprised if he gets taken down. He recently fought, 3 fights ago, Hiromasa Ogukobu, and this dude is 38 years old, 37. Great wrestler, but the way he was able to control Asakura on the ground was a little eye-opening for me. Like, I think Asakura, phenomenal fighter. The ground game is where I think he's going to lose the wrestling. And when Pantoja gets you to the ground, the way he flows, like, if I ever want to tell somebody, like, hey, what does a black belt look like? I will show them tape on Pantoja. The way he flows to the back, the way he can create scrambles and get on top, it is some of the most beautiful shit that even an absolute moron casual can appreciate. Like, wow, that was impressive. In this case, man, I think Asakura is tough. I have seen him get hurt himself. I've seen him get rocked. Pantoja, I think, is just on a different level, but he's getting up there in age. His performances have not been as impressive lately. But Pantoja, you go back, this guy can submit you at any time. If he wants to go out there and just fucking bang with you, he can. He's got a great chin. He just has to avoid really the body work of Asakura. And another guy that will be someone you can rely on to not give up on himself. This guy harbors so much hate for his dad that he's like, I'm going to be a world champion regardless if I'm fucking bleeding internally, regardless of anything. The only way I think Asakura can win this fight is if he can get Papa Pantoja in his corner and just be like, who's daddy now, bitch? And then in that case, we can probably look into betting Kai Asakura. Well, I will also add, I think taking Asakura at plus 200 is not a bad idea. Like, just kind of go into it thinking he can definitely get grapple fucked. We're hoping that he catches that fucking chest of Pantoja where he just drops him immediately. No matter how tough you are, if you hit someone to the body just right, your brain is like, don't do this, don't do it. You will fall to the knee, man. Very similar, like in PFL, I just saw Dakota Ditcheva, which I think is brilliant. I'm putting up a nice little theory about this, but I've noticed that there's very rarely knockouts in women's MMA because women tend to go for for the head, but Dicheva goes to the body. So I'm learning that if you hit somebody, a woman in the baby maker, they have no choice but to instinctually curl to the body to protect the baby maker, and you can TKO them there. And that's what happened to her and Tyler Santos, where I've never seen Santos do that because she never fought a woman that's willing to fuck up your body like Dicheva. And here, the problem that I see with Asakura, him dropping down to 125, how is he going to look? He's not going to be as, well hydrated. How would that cut go for him? There's just so many questions that, to me, it's Pantoja winning this fight, where I'm probably, if anything, putting more serious money on Pantoja, but it's not necessarily deterring me to not actually take a shot on Asakura. I think he can definitely get a knockout, but it's going to be early, right? Because if Pantoja eventually gets you to the ground, which he will, I think Asakura is going to be able to stuff some of these takedowns. Pantoja kind of bum rushes a little stupidly sometimes, where Asakura can take advantage. But if he can't hurt or take advantage of those, lapses of judgment, the lapses of technique, that bum rushing mentality of Pantoja, then at that point Pantoja will get his hands on him. And I would not be surprised if he actually drops Asakura and then just it continuously becomes one of those like, fuck, he got taken down again. Oh my God, he got taken down again. This amazing striker is getting out grappled by an elite Pantoja. So to me, it's Pantoja decision. I think Asakura's tough. I think he's incredibly skilled. I think he can definitely survive on the mat. But I think it's Pantoja's world right now. So give me Pantoja by a decision. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this entire, how many bouts are there? 13, 14 bout card. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, I'm not going to be watching because I'm judging and I'm not allowed to have my phone. But it'd be nice to kind of keep up. Last time I actually judged a fight when there was a fight card the same day, it was the first fight between Volkanovski, and Islam Makhachev. And the MMA gods were in my favor because that whole night, I got paid just to sit there and see everybody get knocked the fuck out. Every fight ended in like the first 2 rounds, mostly in the first round because they were like amateur guys. Amazing. Then I got to go home and I got to see the rest of the card. It was fucking amazing. I'm hoping for that here as well because I would like to see how Asakura does. But again, Johnny TigerBomb MMA. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all that pussy YouTube shit. I would appreciate it. I will see you next week.